Alright guys, so today is going to be my third video. First one coming a while ago, talking about our quarterback situation between Sean White and Jarrett Stidham. Second video talking about our running back depth, focusing on Cameron Petway and Kerryon Johnson. And this third video today is going to be focusing on our defensive linemen, the depth, and what to expect from each player. Now, there are a lot of players on our defensive line, so today I got a fact sheet that I kind of need because there's a lot of players on the defensive line. I will be going from order of number on the player's jersey, no other order than that, because... Okay, so first off, we're going to start off with Marcavius Big Cat Bryant, true freshman, recruited to play our buck position. Obviously, him being a freshman, we have no collegiate film of him, and so we don't have any sample size on the collegiate level from him, but we do have high school numbers and his recruiting ranking and what I expect from him. Now, what I expect from Big Cat is kind of what I expected out of both Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson, and that's just them to play a role on the defensive line. But to everyone's surprise, not really the surprise though, but to everyone's pleasure, Marlon Davidson got the start over Byron Cow or anyone else playing the weak side, the strong side defensive end, playing opposite of Carl Lawson and Montravius Adams. In high school though, he was rated top 15 at his position by Scout, ESPN, and 24/7 Sports, and was a top 15 prospect in Georgia by ESPN and Scout. Now, being a top 15 prospect from Georgia, that's a tall task, because Georgia is an SEC pipeline state, and a lot of recruits go into every SEC school and any other school around the country come out of Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, and Alabama. Now, as a senior, Big Cat did finish with 102 tackles, 36.5 tackles for loss, and 15.5 sacks. Now, those numbers are very impressive as a senior, because that's usually the numbers people get after 2 years as a full-time starter. This is just him as a senior as a starter, and that's incredible to me. And so I expect very big things from him in the future and in this year. I can't imagine him not getting a lot of playing time, and I can't imagine him getting numbers. I do expect him to have about the same productivity as Marlon Davidson in 2016, which was good. I mean, he disrupted a lot of plays, but his numbers weren't out of this world. And speaking of Marlon Davidson, that's the second player we will be talking about. He is a true sophomore. He's going to be playing that strong side defensive end again. In 2016, he finished as an all-freshman first team, and he did start all 13 games. And he was the first true freshman to start the season opener on the defensive line in the last 30 years. Now, that's saying a lot. That means he impressed over Byron Cow, who's been in the system for a year, or only in the system because he was playing for Will Muschamp. That's saying a lot, because you got a veteran guy in Byron Coward that's trying to get that starting spot on the strong side defensive end, and Marlon Davidson comes in as a true freshman, just football IQ, just out of this world, ready to hit somebody in the mouth, and that's just what he did. He had 38 tackles on the season. First tackle came against Clemson in that super tight game, the 19-13 loss against Clemson. Now that's when I was most impressed with him, because he may not have had a lot of numbers in that game, but he was very disruptive. His first sack came against Arkansas State. It was a seven-yard sack, and just throughout the year, he had a just all-around impressive year, and I can't imagine him not improving over the spring and the fall and just being a better all-around player. Now, he did suffer a elbow sprain, and he will be wearing an arm brace this year, and I think that's a good idea, because you don't want your star guys to get hurt, or any of your players to get hurt for that matter, and that's just an extra precaution that him and the coaches decided to take to protect his physicality and his body. Now, as a high school recruit, he did finish the season with 65 tackles, 19 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries and a pair of interceptions and 2 defensive touchdowns as a senior. Now, those alone, like those 2 touchdowns, I can't imagine not coming off those interceptions, you know, or maybe it was a fumble recovery. But those 2 touchdowns as a defensive lineman, man, you don't see that at all, or hardly at all, on the collegiate level, even the high school level. And so I expect big things out of Marlon Davidson again this year. Next up, we got fellow sophomore Derek Brown from the same recruiting class. He'll be playing the defensive lineman, defensive tackle, and he's kind of like Montravius Adams, being able to switch between defensive end and defensive tackle. And coming out of high school, he was a very highly sought out recruit. He was from ESPN Scout 24/7. He was a number 9 overall national prospect and a number 3 defensive tackle. As a senior, he recorded 106 tackles, 42 tackles for a loss, and 12 sacks. Now those are really good, and that's just 1 year as a senior. And now as a career in a career at a high school level, he finished with 270 tackles, 81 tackles for a loss, and 33.5 sacks. Now, if you remember how many tackles for a loss I told you he had as a senior year alone, that's half of what he had in his career. So almost half of all of his stats came as a senior, and that just goes to show you that each year he's improved. And now, as a freshman, his numbers didn't pop off the screen like Marlon Davidson's, but he disrupted a lot of plays. He did play in all 13 games, and he recovered a fumble against Clemson, and he had a tackle for loss and 2 tackles versus Vanderbilt, 2 tackles at Georgia, and was credited with a sack and 3 tackles versus Alabama A&M. And off the football field, he's a very smart kid. He was awarded SEC first-year academic honor roll. Everybody says, "Ooh, SEC, a lot of people from the South, they're not smart." But the kid, he's got a bright head. He's got a good brain in between his shoulders, and I expect big things out of our young defensive linemen. I know I keep saying that, but I can't say anything other than great things about them because they've given us such a good sample size over the past year. Next, we do have Byron Cowart. He's going to be a true junior. He's been a little underwhelming his first 2 years on the Plains. But you know what? With Rodney Garner coaching him up, and from what I've heard over the spring and just all around over the off season, Byron Cowart has matured a ton, and I do believe Byron Cowart will make a name for himself this year. I do believe he's going to be the surprise player on our defensive line, and I just think he's going to shake that bust label that everyone's been giving him, and he's just gonna show everybody that all the hype was real on him coming out of high school. Now, speaking of high school, he did come out of the high school recruiting cycle as the nation's top defensive prospect. He had 185 career tackles and 29 sacks. He was the nation's top-ranked recruit by ESPN and Rivals. And Scout 24/7 ranked him first among recruits at his position nationally. In 2015, as a true freshman, he was in the rotation at defensive end, obviously playing alongside Carl Lawson. He played in every single game as a freshman, saw first action against Louisville, assisting on 2 tackles, and we all remember that game. We're not going to talk about that season right now because who wants to? And he had a tackle, 2 quarterback hurries versus Idaho, and was an academic top Tiger. Now, I don't know what you guys have heard, but from what I've heard, a lot of fans around here are saying that the kid didn't have a good head on his shoulders. He wasn't the smartest person around or sharpest tool in the shed. But that right there, the academic top Tiger, he's a pretty smart kid, man. And like, there's a lot of smart people on the Auburn football team. You just can't take away from his intelligence. His workability or his work ethic may come into question because, I mean, you can just look at him when he plays that he takes some plays off and plays harder on other plays. In 2016, he played in 10 games at defensive end, forced a fumble against Texas A&M 2 tackles against ULM, tackle for loss, and 2 tackles against Arkansas. But he missed the Alabama A&M Alabama games due to injury. Again, like I said earlier before I started talking about Byron Coward, I do believe he's going to be the surprise player on our defensive line. He's going to make a name for himself. He's going to redeem himself, and he's going to show the world and all the Auburn Tiger fans that he's the real deal. He may not have the starting spot because there's stronger players or right now ahead of him, and I just believe he's going to be a lot better this year. Next up, we have Tayshawn Manning. He's a true freshman. Again, like Big Cat, we don't have any collegiate film on him or a sample size from him on the collegiate level, but he is a big-body defensive tackle prospect, and he enrolled early, so he's able to get in work with everybody and start getting the defensive game plan down. He was all-conference defender at Waukeba High. He was the 2015 Florida Class 8A first-team All-State player. And in 24/7 Sports and ESPN rated him as a top 75 defensive tackle prospect. So he wasn't the most highly recruited prospect, but the kid has got game. I've watched plenty of film on him. He's quick off the snap. He's got a good bull rush. And he's got a good head on his shoulder. He knows where he needs to go, when he needs to go there, and he just has a knack for the ball. I don't expect him to get too much playing time because there are a lot of players ahead of him, but I do expect him to play a lot. Against all the lesser teams that we play on our schedule, like Georgia Southern. I expect him to play a lot in the first half, like in the second quarter, and mainly the second half. So I can't really talk much on Tayshawn Manning because there's just limited film to go off of and limited impressions I've gotten from him by watching the high school film. But like I said, I do expect him to be a good player for Auburn. Next up, we have Andrew Williams. He's a defensive lineman, true junior. In 2014, he redshirted, but he was an academic top Tiger for us. In 2015, he was a redshirt freshman at defensive tackle, and he saw his first action against Louisville. First tackle was recorded at Kentucky, and he had a sack and 2 tackles versus Idaho. His playing time did increase in 2016. He was a reserve tackle, but he played in every single game. He had 12 tackles on the season, and his most impressive came against LSU. He had a sack against LSU, a sack against Arkansas, and 2 tackles in the Sugar Bowl against Oklahoma. Andrew Williams, he's going to be a role player for the Auburn defensive line again, but I do believe he's in the 2 deep at defensive tackle, and I do see him getting more playing time again this year than he did last year. So I expect not big things from him, but I expect good things from him. And I'm very excited about him, and we're just going to see where he goes from there. Next guy we got up is one of the guys I'm like super stoked about. Redshirt freshman Nick Coe at defensive end. In high school, he was one of the most dominating defensive end prospects in the nation. He finished the season as a senior with 68 tackles and 15 tackles for loss. He had 34 career tackles for loss. Now, I do believe his first starting season came as a junior. So he was playing on varsity level as a sophomore, got his first starting action as a junior, and just took off from there. 24/7 and Rivals ranked him among the top 12 prospects in North Carolina and was the number 13 strong side defensive end by 24/7 Sports. He was also a state wrestling champ at 285 pounds. Now, wrestling, there's some big dudes wrestling at the high school level, man, especially in the South. So that just goes to show you how strong he is. But in the spring, he hurt himself a little bit, and then fall ball came along, and he has hurt himself even more. So in 2016, he was redshirted. So again, we don't have any collegiate film on him, so we don't really have that big of an impression on him. But in the A-Day game, he looked quick off that snap. He was quick to turn corners on the tackles, and he got to the quarterback quick and easy. So him, I expect really big things, and I expect him to play right behind Marlon Davidson at that strong side defensive end. Last but not least, we do have big number 95, Dontavius Russell, playing defensive tackle. He's a true junior. In 2014, when he was recruited, he was redshirted. He was an academic top Tiger and a SEC first-year honor roll. So again, we got another smart player on our defensive line that just wasn't able to play due to our depth in 2014. Coming out of high school, he finished his senior season with 62 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks at the defensive tackle position. He was a track and field letterman, and Scout had him ranked as a number 12 defensive tackle and top 150 players nationally. 24/7 Sports had him number 12 defensive tackle as well. Rivals had him number 13 defensive tackle, and ESPN had him number 14 defensive tackle. That's by a lot of players at defensive tackle position coming out in 2014. 2015 was when he saw his first action. He was a starter at defensive tackle as a redshirt freshman in 2015. In his first career action, he recorded 6 tackles, 4 quarterback hurries, 1.5 sacks, and 2.5 tackles for loss against Louisville. So that right there, his first career start as a redshirt freshman, he just had a monster game. And then he had 5 tackles against Jacksonville State, 2 stops versus Mississippi State, a fumble recovery, tackle for loss, and 5 tackles versus San Jose State, 2 tackles at Kentucky, 7 tackles and a tackle for loss at Arkansas, 2 tackles at Texas A&M, 3 tackles versus Georgia, 2 tackle assists versus Alabama, and 3 tackles in the Birmingham Bowl versus Memphis, and that was against Paxton Lynch. And so Paxton Lynch obviously was drafted. He was a first-round draft pick by the Denver Broncos. So that right there, you're playing against an NFL caliber quarterback, and he's just a beast. He's a monster up front. In 2016, that's his second straight year as a starter. He was a redshirt sophomore last year. He started in every single game and had 4 tackles against Clemson. And after that, it just kept going. Like, all the tackles just kept piling up for him. And his last game obviously was against Oklahoma, and he finished that game with 4 tackles. And again, he was an SEC academic honor roll player. Now, that's all the players that we have listed at defensive lineman that's going to see significant playing time, or maybe we have other players on defensive line that are going to see some playing time. But these are the guys that I anticipate to get the most playing time out of all of our defensive linemen. And I'm telling you right now, folks, this defensive line is going to be a top 5 in the nation and probably the best in the SEC, because there's so much depth, so much experience, and so much energy. And we have I think we have one of the youngest lines in the SEC with our in regards to our starters. I expect great things out of our defensive line and defense as a whole, but I'll get to the other positions on our defense later. I might do linebackers next, but I'm really feeling the cornerbacks. I really feel like more people need to talk and hear about our cornerbacks, because that's honestly our most underrated group, because through the years we've had such a bad rap at the quarterback position. We haven't been the best at the cornerback position. But defensive line and linebackers have always been solid. They've always been up there with the SEC elite. And again, I just expect big things out of this defensive lineman. And even next year when we have our true freshmen coming in, we're just only getting better, because we're just stacking up on talent, guys, and we got a bright future for this team, and we're only going to get better, man. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and let me know what you guys think. War Damn Eagle.